Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we're meeting on today. This morning, I left my home on Boonwurrung country. I crossed over Birrarung and came here to Naarm, the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and express my gratitude for their continued care and tendering of the lands and waters where I get to live, work, and raise my family. And I want to say good morning. My colleague Simon Goodrich couldn't be here in person, he's here in spirit, and he's going to start the presentation for me.
Spoken words then are symbols of affections of the soul, and written words are symbols of spoken words. What these primarily are signs of the affections of the soul. This is from Aristotle 2,500 years ago. How do we define design?
So how do we define design? That's a question that Simon and I have been exploring with the DIA and hundreds of designers across Australia for the past couple of years. And as we know, design is becoming ubiquitous in everything from digital systems to healthcare, education, biomedical research. Whatever area of design it is that you're working in, it's growing. And globally, people have been asking this question: how do we define design? And an agreed answer is very, very hard to find. And I guess we need to ask, well, why do we need to find an answer? We need to find an answer for a lot of reasons. We need to find an answer to this question because we can't set quality standards for our work and know that we're actually comparing apples with apples. We can't advertise easily for talent. Anyone who's ever put a job out there for a designer, you'd know how hard that is, because we can't actually point to the skills and capabilities that are required for all of our design roles. We can't actually develop and offer proper education pathways for the next generation of design talent. And we can't establish training and skilled migration pathways so that we can grow and diversify our amazing workforce capabilities in our brilliant design community. And how do I know that these are some of the problems that we have? I know it because Simon and I, along with the Design Institute of Australia, have been listening to designers of Australia for the past couple of years. And over 450 of you participated in a survey last year to talk about the problems you have defining your occupation of design. And this is some of what we've heard. We've heard that job ads are really causing confusion for job seekers. We've also heard that potential employers are probably not looking at your CVs and saying, I know what that title is, I know what that role is, I know I can employ you. We also have heard that designers are really finding it hard to migrate because they don't qualify for skilled visas to get here. I see some nodding going on. Okay. We've also heard that the absence of recognised professional categories means that organisations find it really hard to implement appropriate training programs. How many times have you done your annual training program plans with your boss and gone, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? We have no idea. We've also heard it's really hard to explain what we do outside of visual design, so it's getting really hard for people to understand the value, the actual value that we bring as designers. We also know that we become marginalised and made invisible, and that means it's really hard to prepare new graduates with the appropriate education and make it visible. And the ambiguity means that different interpretations of the exact same role can occur in every organisation, every single one. We also know that the inaccuracy in job descriptions affects our wages because we can't compare our roles across organisations. And ultimately, this is probably familiar to most of you, we're constantly explaining what we do, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. So, before we get into solving these problems today, because I am a designer, I am going to go through the whole problem-solving part of it, I really want to start at the beginning. I really want to start with that word. As you heard Simon say, the affection of our souls, the term that brings us all together, design. How do we define design? Well, the great thing is that the word design is really fun because it's both a verb and a noun. And so it means it's loaded with different kinds of meaning. All the affections of our human soul have imbued the word design with multiple meanings over time. And that means that design is the discipline. It means that we as designers have our occupation. In our occupation, we do designing, the very activities. And it means that we deliver designs, the outputs themselves. And it very quickly turns into a nonsensical equation that design equals designers designing designs. And we kind of wonder, why does no one understand what we do? Well, that's why. So, verb and a noun, really helpful, also not very helpful. Great from a linguistics perspective, but doesn't help us as designers understand what we do and agree on what we do. Doesn't help anyone who wants to collaborate with us, nor the people who want to recruit us. It doesn't help anyone who wants to understand the quality or value of our work. And it doesn't help anyone who wants to set up education programs either, if this is how we define what we do. So, how do we define design as an activity? Definitions of design have emerged via conversations in various institutions and power structures over many centuries. What we have at the moment is an explanation from the Oxford English Language Dictionary that design is a plan or scheme conceived in the mind and intended for subsequent execution, the preliminary conception of an idea that is to be carried into effect by action, a project. There we go, rolls right off the tongue. The UK Design Council have something a little more pithy. They say that design is what happens when people use creativity to solve problems. And the International Council of Design have said that design is a discipline of study and practice focused on the interaction between a person and the, I've edited this, person-made environment, taking into account aesthetic, functional, contextual, cultural, and societal considerations. Now, that's just a small sample of English language, Western cultural definitions of design. I haven't even begun to explore the multitude of languages and cultures and their definitions of design. Now, that's a really interesting presentation for another time. Today, I just want to say there's a plethora of descriptions of design as an activity. And we need to think about, well, why do we have so many ways to define design at the moment as an activity? Well, Maggie Graham has recently published a book, and I think she's written it perfectly. And Simon, hopefully his voice is going to pop on and tell us what.
No one person invented the idea of design. Design was invented, in large part, through discourse. From Maggie Graham in her book, The Invention of Design.
So if you haven't had a look at the book yet, I highly recommend Maggie Graham's book, The Invention of Design. It's this discourse that has led us to where we are today. We're in occupations of design that are as undefinable as the activity itself. And this has been brought about by the multitudes of discourse that have gotten us to this point. So, how did we get here? What has the discourse been? Why do we have so many different definitions? Well, the origins of design can be traced to the early 17th century. I'm pretty sure you didn't think you'd get a history lesson today, but you're going to, just a brief one. And the work of Galileo Galilei. And the term design in Italian was used then to refer to original ideas or initial sketches for works of art. So the definition of design, as it started, was used for the activity of design, but not for the profession of design itself. With the Industrial Revolution, lots of new technologies, mass production, led to a growing need for individuals to plan and shape manufactured goods. So the professionalization of design really accelerated in the early 20th century. Artists began to be employed to help develop corporate styles and product designs and led to a lot of the occupations we know and understand today. So the term graphic design appeared in print in 1908. And professional design education was established by 1919. The founding of design schools, such as Bauhaus in Germany and Verhuchtemaß in the USSR, meant that we also started to see the first certified designers in industrial production. But as Richard Buchanan has noted, design has always been regarded as a service activity, practiced by artisans who had really great practical knowledge and intuitive abilities, but they did not possess the ability to define the first principles of their work. So, the activity of design has been defined through discourse, and in the same way, we as designers have really struggled to define our occupation for centuries. We've consistently found it difficult to define what design as an activity is, what design work involves, what we as designers do, and what the value of it is, and come to an agreement on it. So it means we've consistently struggled for recognition of what we do. And when we fail to define design, we fail to strengthen who we are as a design community. Because I'm pretty sure if we're good at getting all of our stakeholders to come to consensus, maybe we could do the same thing ourselves. Because we're going to keep struggling for recognition and being left out of the discussions until we define what it is we do. So how might we define design as an occupation? Well, these days we see design referenced in many, many, many places, from graphic and visual through to industrial and product, onto UX and service, and then where I work, in strategic and systems design. There's a lot of different occupations, and most of you in this room today will identify with one or many of those occupations. And you'll probably explain that you're one type of designer and be mistaken for another. So the common thing that happens to me when I say I'm a designer is people think I come and remodel their home. And I kind of have to say, look, I might have a bit of an eye for design, but I'm totally unqualified and I won't make it look that great. That's not what I do at all. The other problem that you might face when you try and tell people what it is that you do is you might cover one or many roles all the time in your job. You might do a bit of graphic, you might do a bit of service, you might do a bit of UX on any one day. Or you might have started in UX and now work in product. You might have started in graphic and you could even work in fashion. We quite often transfer over in between our design occupations throughout our careers as well. So there are some things that bind us together. And I've got some really good news. We do have some actual definitions of what our design occupations are in Australia. And you can use them or not, and you can change them as well. And that's really why Simon and I are here today, to encourage you to get involved in defining our design occupations properly for Australia, because we have an opportunity to do that now. Now, you're going to ask me how. I'm going to say, bear with me. I've just got one more small story to tell you first. So, if you didn't know, and I really hope most of you didn't, but if you're a nerd like me, you'd probably know that there's an Australian-New Zealand standard classification of occupations. And for the past 20 years, this is the version that we've had in Australia, called ANSCO. So, for the past 20 years, this is the definition in ANSCO that we've given of design. We were put together in a minor group with architects, designers, planners, and surveyors. And if you read the really fine print up there, halfway through, you can see that we design information for visual communication, publication, and display, and products for manufacture. Anyone missing in that description? Yeah? Anyone? Yeah, lots of people. All right. Well, that's been the description of what design is as an occupation in Australia for the past 20 years. So when it was written, that's what mobile phones looked like. And I'm pretty sure we can all agree a few things have changed in what we do in design since then. This is the list of design occupations that they included. And just to pull it out, here is what was recognised as official design occupations for the past 20 years. You can probably see that there's a few missing. If you can't see your job title up there, you don't officially exist. And you might also want to think through that there's some that don't exist anymore. Is there any multimedia designers in the room? Yay! All right. You're a specialist. Specialist multimedia. Fantastic. Excellent. Claiming it for the whole design community. This is great to know. Thank you. Thank you for standing up for it. Okay, well, Simon and I have worked really hard to gather some interest the past couple of years to get this changed, so it would actually reflect what we do today. And we put forward a case to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the ABS, to get it all updated. And I'm really pleased to say we've had some big wins. So in December last year, December 2024, they changed ANSCO to be Oscar, the Occupation Standard Classification for Australia. It got published in December. And in it, the major win we had was we're now our own minor group. Design is now its own minor group. Now, not a statistical nerd. It's okay. I'll explain what this means. It means we now are called design professionals, and when you fill out online forms and the drop-down boxes come up and they say, what do? You should see design professionals listed there as its own category from now on. All right. And that's where I'm calling on all my digital design colleagues in the room. Can you go use Oscar to update your list, please? So, we're one of only 25 professional minor groups in Australia. So we're recognised as really contributing to the economic and social and creative activities of Australia. It also means we're recognised that there's between 50 to 150,000 of us working in design in Australia as well. It's a pretty huge number. Now, we also have our own unique definition now of design as an occupation. This is what it is. We design digital and graphic content for entertainment, information, and visual communication, and design products and interior spaces for manufacture and construction. This is our group of design occupations now. This is who's included. I really want to acknowledge that all of our mates in digital design, UX design, you actually used to be over in IT professionals. We've brought you into the design community. Great to have you here. So lovely, finally. We have our fashion, graphic, interior, but you look at that list and you might see there's some things missing still. I'll explain them in a second. But I do want to emphasise, we're first in the world. USA, UK, Canada, New Zealand don't have this recognition yet. We're the first to be a minor group of design professionals and include UX and UI in our community. So we've got a lot to be proud of. And fair to say, I think Australia really loves designers. Here's some descriptions for you. Have a quick look. If you're a digital designer, this is what they say your occupation is. There's a whole bunch of capabilities and skills listed as well. Industrial designer or product designers is an alternative title. This is your description. Graphic and visual content designers. Interior designers, if any of you are in the room, really need to talk to you about what it is you do. And then finally, here's service design. Here's strategic design. Might notice something. We're not yet recognised. Now, so we have some wins, but we still have a lot to do. So emergent design occupations haven't yet been included. And those existing design definitions, we probably want to do a refresh on them as well. So we now have an amazing base to define design for all of us and include emergent design practices. And that's what Simon and I, with the DIA, are encouraging all of our design community members to think about over the next year in Australia. Because in even better news, the ABS is committed to working with our community to get our emergent design occupations registered after the next census, and to getting all of our descriptions updated as well. So we've got a year. We have a year to come to agreement on our definitions of our design occupations And to make sure everyone knows when they fill out the census, list your design occupation, please. We need to be counted and recognised. And look, there's a counterfactual here. Well, what if we don't? What if we don't? What if we don't update this? What if we don't care about the census? What if we don't write anything? What if we don't come together and find an agreement? Well, I'd tell you myself, but I think your colleagues have said it best over the past few years. And here's a small sample of what 450 of you have told Simon and I. That we're going to have egregious, shallow understandings of design. We're going to have poorly defined job descriptions. Our education institutions are going to struggle to justify the creation or continuation of courses. Our roles are going to continue to be misunderstood. And we're not going to be able to establish professional standards. We're not going to be accurately understood or valued. Our industry practices are not going to be able to align with educational outcomes. We're not going to be understood across all sectors. We can't facilitate international mobility. And the visa application and immigration processes are going to continue to be complicated. That's what lies ahead if we don't come together and continue to define design. Because when we define it, we're not confining design. We're going to make it visible. We can also do some really important things like introduce a code of ethics and hold ourselves accountable to the people and the planet that we are designing for. If we want to be recognised, we need to be defined, especially when the next census comes around. I'm going to let Simon finish.
How do we define design? How do each of you define it? How does your organisation define it? How do we as a community agree to define it? As history has taught us, to remain undefined means we remain unrecognised. To define design isn't to confine it. It's about strengthening who we are.
So join us and define design. Thanks, everyone.